Hey everybody, Jason here. It's been a little while since I've uploaded a video. I just haven't had a whole lot of ideas for content recently. I've been a little dry creatively, so I haven't had a whole lot of stuff to talk about video-wise. Plus I've been really busy and stuff like that, and haven't done a whole lot of RPG reading other than Simba Room on my breaks at work, which I'm about halfway through. Which means if anybody who owns Simba Room knows that about halfway through is like 120 pages, because it's a short book. That's how little I get to read RPG books. You know, having a daughter and stuff, 2-year-old daughter, 2.5-year-old daughter, there's just not a lot of time for anything. And then at work, I'm, you know, only part of a 15-minute break gets spent working. I mean, a 15-minute break gets spent reading role-playing games, so my role-playing game time reading is limited. Anyway, that's not what this video is about. This video is about something I've mentioned before, and I kind of wanted to get maybe get some other people's takes on it and see what they think. And it's basically about lethality and healing in role-playing games, specifically, more specifically, D&D style role-playing games, where you know, like I've talked before about how hard it is to die in 5th edition and other D&D games where you got tons and tons of hit points, and you know, damage doesn't really scale with your level unless it's wizard spells, so like melee damage doesn't really scale. I know multiple attacks per round can help scale it a little bit, but that just slows play down. And there's also, you know, no guarantee that all those things will hit, but so tons and tons of hit points, very low damage equals, and plus a very high armor class in 5th edition. It's very easy to get your armor class jacked up pretty far, pretty fast, 1st, 2nd level, and that's without magic items. If that tells you anything. But, you know, it just makes for long combat. And I don't necessarily mind a long combat. The problem is after a long combat, or even in the middle of a long combat, some things actually that drag it out are healing in the middle of combat, you know. I don't mind combat being a little bit long as long as they're fun, but when combat takes forever, and then, you know, say you spend a half an hour or more on a combat, and once it's over, it's like, well, I've still got a ton of hit points. You know, if something else happens the rest of the evening or day in game time, it's not a big deal. I should probably survive just fine. Or it's, you know, we suffered a lot of damage. Let's do a 5-minute rest, take a short rest, and I'll, you know, drop, you know, 6 hit dice of rest for a short rest, and get healed up, you know, 6d6 or 6d8 hit points or something. And that's without magic healing or without potions. When you factor in potions and healing spells and things like that, it's mind-numbingly slow as far as it slows the games down, and it just is a drag. It doesn't make combat feel lethal, which means there's not really a lot of there's no consequence to it. It doesn't feel like it feels like the only purpose for combat in 5th edition and some other role-playing games, like, you know, Pathfinder and 3rd edition, even 2nd edition to some extent, was basically just filler. And I've got something in my eye. I think it's an eyelash. I apologize. It's just like combat's just a filler for games. It seems like certain games. So I've been thinking about things to speed combat up and not only to speed it up, but to make it feel important, to make it feel like there's some gravity to it, some weight. You know, I've been thinking about things like, you know, taking away the ability to heal on a short rest, or reduce the effectiveness of healing spells, maybe. I definitely would love to take out resurrection spells and the ability to resurrect in the game, unless it's specifically part of a larger quest. You know, it sucks where, you know, you're going in at, you know, 10th level and you get into a big fight and your character gets killed and you're like, who cares? It's all right. We'll just take the body back to town and pay the priest X amount of gold and to pay for their, you know, supplies or the service or whatever, and get you resurrected. No big deal. Or it's like, oh, well, I brought a diamond with me and I've got all these other things that, you know, are required, components that are required to cast this resurrection spell. Once the combat's over, I'll just resurrect you. No big deal. I know you can role play things out, like, you know, mentally I'm a little different, or it affected me and I'm scared, or I see the world a little differently or whatever, but there's really not any repercussion for dying and being brought back to life. Rules as written anyway. And it feels like combat's just filler, you know? There's no weight behind it. It doesn't feel important. It's not scary. It's not tense. It's never nerve-wracking. You know, it just is boring. It's just, okay, it's combat. It's boring. I don't know. I don't care about combat, really. And sadly, most game systems are built mechanically on a framework that is combat. And everything else, I don't want to say everything else, but other things are sort of like, I don't want to say tacked on, but let's face it, D&D was built on the skeleton of a combat game system. And that's okay. That is what it is. That's fine. And it does what it does, you know, fairly well. But it just, there's, like I said, there's no weight behind it. There's no oomph or like repercussion or fear of death or anything like that. It's just like hitting a continue button after you've lost all your lives in a video game. You know what I mean? Like, oh well, I died, who cares? Or if you are in a point where you're like, you know, I feel like trying a different character. I died, and so this is a great opportunity for me to just create a new character. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's just weird. Anyway, I wanted to see if what you guys thought about healing and combat and resurrection and how to make those things more exciting and feel like they're more important. Feel like death is a real thing, and without breaking the game, without making it too lethal, like, you know, death saves. Okay, not only have you gotten to negative hit points, you also have 3 death saves. So like, really, it's like, how much hand-holding do you need in the game to keep your character alive? Why don't you play smarter rather than having a ton of different mechanical hand-holding bits to help you keep your character alive? It's just getting kind of silly at this point. With every iteration of the game, it gets harder and harder to die, and that's something that's also drawing me a little bit towards OSR gaming and that style of gaming. So anyway, I want to see what some of your guys' thoughts were on making games a little more lethal, a little more combat's a little more important, a little more weight and gravity behind them, and I know it was kind of a rambling video as usual, but anyway, that was kind of what I was thinking about. So anyway, hope you guys are having a good time, good week, and I will talk to you later. See you.